All right. Hello, Blactrospective beauties. I want to welcome everyone to our show. Today we're going to have an exciting one, and this is honestly a new series. If I want to be honest, let me take that back a little bit. Welcome to our new civic re-education series. Today we're going to have special guests with us that are. Golly, I didn't practice this. I'm so sorry. Let me start over. Welcome, Black Perspective Beauties. It's your girl, Ma B, and I am here with some special guests today. We are going to be, this episode is called The Ballot Begins Here. And we have myself. Y'all been with me all this time, so you know who I am. But I would like to introduce my special guest or co-host, B Speakins. So sloppy in the beginning, but y'all been with me, so you used to it. B Speaks.
Hey guys.
Where'd you go?
Oh, am I not here? Can
Yeah,
you see
now
me?
you are.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
All right.
I,
Did you do your introduction?
oh no, sorry. Okay. Hi. Hello guys. My name is B speaking. I am a co-host with Mo, and so a little bit about me. I do a little bit of everything. I'm a writer, entrepreneur. I'm a poet. So I dibble and dabble throughout lots of things. This podcast is so true and dear to my heart. I love bringing social issues and having a lens on social issues and talking about it and creating a space for us to be transparent about things that matter, especially matter to us within the Black community. So always excited to come on board and chat.
Thank you. Thank you, B. And we also have our honorary co-host, Zoe Taylor. Welcome to.
Hi, I'm Zoe Taylor. I am very large in my hometown community of Bay County with activism. I was a large tree hugger in the aspect of I replanted trees in my community. I raised money to do so. A large hurricane hit the area. I was one of the main ones pushing and working inside of a food bank there for years until the shutdown. I continued my work here in Orlando when I moved down here, organizing fundraisers, running around, doing everything I can for the students of Valencia College as well, and making sure that the younger generation is heard, especially in political campaigns and elections. And I'm honored to be on Black Perspective today.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So right now we know it's like tumultuous times. We're at I feel like this is one of those times where I used to be like, man, I wish I was part of those movements back in the 70s, but here it comes again. We're at a point in time where, you know, cargo ships are getting bombed. We're at a time where a lot of laws are being reversed, a lot of laws that were put in place to, or even initiatives that were put in place to protect immigrants traveling over here is now being removed. So all this starts from a base, right? Everything has a root. And what we have to recognize is that this is not something that it just happened out of nowhere. We've kind of seen the slow build up until this time. So we felt like it was very important that we start this re-education program just so that we can just take it back to the basics, like how to vote. And we have Larry Colleton, who's going to be our very first guest, is someone that I have had the opportunity to go with him and see him in action. And we keep bumping into each other, Larry. We keep bumping into each other, and I feel like that's for a reason. So for my audience today, my question to you is, when did you fall in love with politics? And then for Larry, he is somebody that has been into politics since he was 11 years old, is what he told me, which is so freaking adorable. I'm sure the feeling wasn't adorable at the time that it happened to you, but just the thought that at such a very young age that you could be engaged and activated is just surprising, because what does a 11-year-old know about politics, which I guess you're going to tell me. So he's the current president of the Florida Voters League. After serving 7 years, he started also leading the Orange County chapter. I hope I didn't say that backwards. And he's also the chair of civic engagement and political action for the Orange County NAACP. Larry, when did you fall in love with politics?
I was 11 years old, and politics kind of happened, and you would not think that somebody who's 11 years old would, but I have to give you quickly what happened. And also, I'm a lot older. Uh, I was 11 years old in 1968. Okay, so that's my, you know, uh,
Yeah.
and so what happened in February 1968, three students attempting to integrate a bowling alley in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I lived about 45 miles away. Three students of among a group of students from South Carolina State College and Claflin College. They were protesting, and three of them were killed. And so that happened just a few miles away from where I'm living. That was February 1968. Less than 2 months later, I was watching briefly. There were three news programs on Sunday morning shows. Issues and Answers was ABC. Meet the Press still around. Face the Nation still around. And Martin Luther King was on one of those, and I ignored it. I turned to something else. And then on April 4th, 1968, he was assassinated. And he was in Memphis, Tennessee to help the garbage workers who had been treated so unfairly, and two of them had been crushed to death. And then a few months later, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in California after winning the California primary in the Democratic Party. The next month, July, was the Democratic National Convention, and all hell broke out in Chicago, Illinois. 7 people killed there. The next month, I was starting my sixth grade year, and I got this weekly reader, which was a newspaper for kids. And on it was a woman who had to get a pass because she was dark. It was from South Africa. I didn't realize white people were in South Africa. I just didn't think. And then the following month, the 1968 Olympics took place in Mexico City, Mexico. John Carlos and Tommy Smith did the raise of the fist
I
that
remember
people
that.
talk
Yes.
about.
Very
And then the
controversial.
following month or so, Nixon, Humphrey, and Wallace, the 1968 election. That was my year. I couldn't. I stayed up. My grandparents allowed me to stay up that
Yeah.
night to see the election results. And so I was hooked. And when I turned 18, I still have my voter registration card from 1976 when I registered to vote
That is
in South
incredible.
Carolina.
That is
So,
incredible in the sense of like you took that experience and you use it as something to get engaged, where some people would want to hide or run from that situation. So I commend you because you didn't take the easy route.
it was just too close. Those students, we had someone from our community was a student at SC State at the time. She was not injured. I'm not even sure if she participated in the protests, but it touched us all because it was happening right there within, just a county away from us.
Now, at the time that you speak of, Martin Luther King, you said wasn't popular, right? Because he got murdered in that same year. I remember reading a book, The Death of a King. Um, what was the sentiment of your parents?
You know, there wasn't. These are my grandparents, and they were born in the early 1900s. So, and I actually got to know my maternal great grandmother, who was born in 1878. She died in 1971. Um,
That's a blessing.
they didn't talk to us kids about politics. I mean, that's something they talked, grown folk. But we kids, my contemporaries, we discussed it because in we were just years away from being drafted. There were kids graduating in 1966, June 66, and they're dead in September 66 with Vietnam. So we were already discussing what was our strategy for this future, because the war was still going on. And my best friend in high school, his father was killed in Vietnam when he was in the seventh, eighth grade. So I mean, it was everything it was home. It was touching us.
So this could have gone two ways. Like it could have gone somewhere where you became violent, but instead you decided to get political.
I didn't read much about Gandhi from India until later as an adult, but that's who MLK actually followed. Um, if you all are aware, India for hundreds of years was dominated by Great Britain. You know, they said that the sun never set on the British Empire. They touched every continent. Um, but Gandhi's nonviolent effort in India caused the British to leave India, and in the late 1940s, India became an independent country and a democratic country. Matter of fact, India is still the largest democracy in the world. They have over a billion people.
I really
Um,
want to go down this rabbit hole with you, but I
uh-huh.
also want to get back. I want to get to the election piece of it
Sure.
because yeah, we're not even gonna go there just yet. But I wanted to know that I wanted to know like when did you start? So now you are the president of the Florida Voters League now, but like what
Yeah.
was your first like political movement? Like how did you get into elections? How did you get to that piece of your career?
Well, it
Or even as
started
a
actually
citizen?
in the early 1980s. I became a member of the NACP in Valdosta, Georgia.
Okay.
And so one of the areas that I was very much concerned with was voting. And we learned so much more about the Voting Rights Act and some of the efforts that were taking place. And now they're just all over. The Voting Rights Act was always, every 10 years, it was getting reconfirmed, every 10 years, every Congress. But then there were hesitancies in the 80s during the Reagan administration. But even in that administration, they still held it. But I got to tell you now, the Voting Rights Act, and I've been following this very closely, literally the last 30 years. It is now the verge of being overturned. Um, there's a case, and all of you should check it out. Louisiana versus Calais. It is spelled Callais.
Okay.
Louisiana versus Calais. I went up in October for that argument. Two justices who had upheld a case just a few years earlier seem to be flipping. And if those two judges flip, the Voting Rights Act will basically, Section 2 of
Oh,
the Voting Rights
interesting.
Act will be gutted. So that's the case you need to watch. It was argued twice in the spring and then in the fall. And it's expected any day now to come down. And if it comes down the way they were sounding, we will be able to say that the Voting Rights Act will be history, straight up. And that ought to concern us all. Because once they do it, if you think that these governments or these states like Florida doing mid-decade redistricting, these other states will do the same thing. They will rush out and try to do the same before the November elections.
So I'm glad you're touching on elections. Why do you think this election is so important? And what have you heard in regards to the confusion and intensity surrounding the election cycle, specifically this election cycle?
Well, I can tell you that if the Republican Party, and by the way, I'm the Florida Voters League as well as the NAACP nonpartisan.
As long as
But the
Blactrospective too.
yes, but the fact of the matter, we've just got to just speak truth to it all. If in fact the Republicans maintain the Senate, the House, and obviously they have the White House, whatever you think of this democracy, this democratic republic we have, it will be over. It will be over. The Supreme Court gave Donald Trump immunity, and that was an incredible disservice to the Constitution and to this country. And so, if in fact people are not, if they don't do politics, believe me, politics is doing people right now. That's why we did the with respect to TPS. The only thing that is saving the TPS, sustaining it, is a court order. That's all. If Trump had his way, more than 200,000 Haitians who had temporary protective status would be rounded up. And so this is a fight for not just simply justice, democracy, the American way. Those things actually used to have a meaning. And when you have authoritarianism, those things go, justice goes away, fairness goes away, equal justice under the law goes away.
And I think that's something very important, at least for me. I have people that I know that choose not to vote, and I don't think that they recognize how hard our predecessors had it to get us even to this point, just to even have the privilege to say they want to sit out on a vote. It's something that's very hard for me to digest. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm always elegant in terms of the response. Zozo B, how you guys feel?
I think part of the reason a lot of people, at least in my younger generation, they're not voting is one, because from what we've seen so far, we've had Trump and Biden. That's all we've had in office growing up. Yes, we were born when Obama was in office, but when you're first real president, when you're first like getting the knowledge of voting and how your current democracy works, or what we think is a democracy, you see him. And you're watching your country go in a constant downfall. And it doesn't give inspiration to vote. And then we are taught in the younger generation that the electoral college is all that matters. And local elections aren't really touched on. And people don't understand that those local elections are what gives you your federal senators and what makes your president. Because your president, most of the time, they run for those offices beforehand. You have a chance to get to know them. And that isn't pushed into our education system. We're so severely undereducated that it leaves this room for people like him to get into office. And also, just to touch on what Larry said, there was a push on Trump being re-impeached this morning by lawmakers in the Senate and House of Rep. There was a press statement released about him going through the impeachment process again. Now, I know the impeachment process is different from removal of office, but it's still a glimmer of hope.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
B speaks.
If I may just touch on that just quickly. He could be impeached, but of course that's in the House, which is dominated by Republicans, but not by much. And he's angered enough Republicans, they might do it to him in the House. But then the problem is our Constitution requires 2/3 of the Senate to convict. That's the only way he is removed from office via the impeachment process, is being convicted. Back in 2021, there were like 60 senators who voted to convict him, but that fell 7 short. And had he been convicted, he could not have run in 2024.
I agree with you on that. But that being said, in 2021, we didn't have the access to the Epstein files, which has put the public in an uproar, which has pushed for them to even make that statement. Because realistically, if it was up to all of the Republicans sitting in that sitting in our Congress, they probably would not have tried to move to re-impeach him. They don't care. They're okay with getting their paycheck, and that's fine for them. But when you have an entire country of people pushing for one person out of office, you can't ignore it, because realistically, if they don't at least do something or make it seem like they're doing something, they're not going to get reelected.
Hoping that they won't be reelected.
Well, I hope they're not reelected anyways, but they're willing to sacrifice him clearly over
Mhm.
their own personal careers, because he's
Well,
already made a foolery of himself. He has been for the past 6 years.
well, and then yet the people did that. But I also want to touch on something you said. Um, yes, they're willing to, they potentially may be willing because of if you read what's in the Epstein files, I mean, there are people, women, young girls, who have accused him of sexually having sex with them as kids.
Well,
That's
it's
in the
worse.
Epstein file.
Well, I have been reading the Epstein files. Unfortunately, I've been on a deep dive of the Epstein files, and I genuinely wish that it stopped at the sexual assault. I wish it stopped at the sexual assault. It should have stopped at the first page of "My name is Jeffrey Epstein." That's where it should have stopped. It should have never happened, but yet and still, he's completed more atrocities than just sexually assaulting women. It's
Right.
down to the point of cannibalism,
Yeah.
kidnapping,
Yeah.
extortion,
And some even believe murder.
murder,
Listen,
most definitely.
Yeah.
yeah.
When he's the farming of children. When you're looking at all of that, you can't ignore
Mhm.
you can't
You know
ignore
what?
that. When
Yeah.
when parts of it are still redacted and the American people are calling for those redactions to be brought to the light, there's not many options left for Congress.
Yes. Um, Other than Epstein, Trump appears more than anybody else. Okay,
I
Yes.
heard that
it's
from the
the
very
Epstein
beginning.
file, but
Yes.
he appears more than anyone else. Look, this is we're seeing what power and class
Yes.
can do for you. Most of the men are powerful men, men in positions of authority, or they're incredibly wealthy. And they acted as though the rules did not apply to them. Basically, the rule of law did not apply to them.
Well,
And they're,
I'm
yes, and
sorry.
that's what's happening. That's what really what we're seeing on full display is these people don't think that the rules apply to them. Look at Pam Bondi's performance last week.
Did you see the Pam Bondi pictures with Trump where it says that like she was one of the kids that were SA'd? Like they have a picture together, Trump and Pam Bondi. She looks like she's no more than like 14 years old. And now she's the head of DOJ. But this
A
also
lot of
alludes
sorry.
to, hold on one second. This also corroborates what I heard at a young age. Like the laws aren't for the rich; it's for everybody else, and they've operated on that.
Yeah. I
So
think that's true.
but I think the only time that it isn't true is, or only time it wouldn't be true is if we could unite, right? We could unite and make these sound decisions because we are the number, we are the majority in terms of, there's only 1% of like millionaires and, the billionaires and then the new segment of trillionaire or whatever. Our power is in the election cycles.
Yes, but let me just share this. Race has a factor here. Ethnicity plays a role in this. Um, I'm afraid that this period in our history is showing just how deeply racist America is. Donald Trump didn't become a racist
You're
overnight.
absolutely right.
Donald Trump didn't become a racist last year.
Right.
Donald Trump was a racist when he came down the golden escalator in 2015, but he was a racist before then.
Yeah.
And so what is it about America that white supremacy is okay, that racism is okay, and white privilege is expected? And I'm going to share with you all the ultimate example of white privilege. January 6th, 2021.
Oh, 100%.
All of those white people smashing into the US Capitol. Had that been 10,000 black folk, brown folk, there would have
Absolutely.
been dead bodies all over. They would have been
No
shot by
doubt.
whites, black officers, Asian officers, but they showed the ultimate in restraint when it came down to white people. White people who were smashing them, hitting them with all kinds of poles and what have you, spraying them with bear spray. That's that's the ultimate example of white privilege. They got it. No other group would have that. No Native American, no Black American, no Hispanic American would have had that privilege.
So what's the answer? What do we do at this
Well,
point?
to thine own self be true. We've got to speak truth to these people. I think one of the big, I spend a lot of time with having discussions with my church about this. The face of Christianity, whether you're a Christian or not, the face of Christianity in America is evangelical white Christians. And they're the biggest supporters of Donald J. Trump.
Yep.
Now, folks, those two things don't add up. Okay?
Does it not? Jesus came from Egypt. However, he's got blue eyes, blonde hair, and fair skin. I'm just saying,
Right.
make it make
And a
sense.
pointy nose. You go into their
Does it not
churches,
make
and that's
sense?
what Jesus was not a European.
He looks European in every church I've been to. All right, used to. But I don't know if we ever got to that second follow up in terms of like, okay, we know that there's a local level to all of this federal level, right? Like, let's take it all the way back to the basics. What do you think is like the confusion surrounding the election cycles that to the point that like it's getting to the point that federally it's out of control. It's essentially controlled by the elites or the rich or the privileged. So what's the
Well,
confusion or intensity
I,
around it?
I don't know. A lot of this, I fear, is complacency and really just not apathy. Now, hear me out. Just last November, we had an election in the city of Orlando in District 5, predominantly black, brown, um, less than 10% of the registered voters voted.
I saw that.
26,000 registered voters plus, 26,000 plus, less than 2,500 voted.
I
Now,
do.
if I go back a year to November 2024, 89 million Americans eligible to vote did not vote.
Do we want to talk about why? Like, this is not where I was headed for the evening, but do we want to talk about why? Because I feel like I feel like conversations need to be had and accountability needs to be made. Um, why do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of it is people don't think that it makes any difference who's in office.
And where does that
Um,
come from?
Dissatisfaction with the elected officials. But I also think there's a level of ignorance. And the ignorance is not understanding how government works.
Okay.
Um, just because you elect a president doesn't mean the president can just do anything he or she wants. I know for us it's a he because that's all it's ever been. But I also have to tell you, that's what Donald Trump is doing. He is acting like a dictator. And a lot of people, especially those evangelical Christians, they like that. But that's not democracy.
No.
That's not democracy. So earlier, I believe Zoe mentioned about education is really important, and we just don't have a fundamental understanding of how local government works, how state government works, and how the national government works, and how politics plays into that, party affiliation, etc. And so I think people need to know that just because you elect somebody doesn't mean that everything that person said he or she was going to do is going to be accomplished. So you have to be realistic about what your desires are. I think sometimes it's unrealistic to think that everything can happen. The biggest thing that Barack Obama accomplished was the Affordable Care Act. But the after that, the last 6 years of his presidency,
There was
no
no.
one can really say because it got all interrupted by Republican control of one of the both houses. And so people need to understand what that is.
So
Um, and so, regardless of your political party, or no, you don't have a party, you gotta have a better understanding of how it works.
there's so many things I want to touch on, but before we do, go ahead, Zoe.
One thing I wanted to say was just like, I don't think it's pure ignorance. I think it's our education systems because so many people are so many people are taught that you should vote for your president, but they're never taught how to. We aren't taught in school how to do our taxes. We aren't taught in school how to write a check. And for some older generations, even my grandparents, they were told they were taught how to do that. And that's why they have this disconnect thinking that our generations are so ignorant in politics, but we aren't taught anything. We get in Florida, you get a seventh grade civics class, you have economics your senior year, and US government your senior year, and that is the most you get to learn about how to be a good citizen. You have no real standing on how to vote, where you register to vote at. You don't even know how to fill out a ballot correctly. If you want to learn that, you have to take the time to do it yourself. And a lot of people, specifically in America, are not going to take that extra time out of their life if it's not already handed to them, if it's not tools that are already made for them. And even then, in the political space, when you look at our black and brown sisters and brothers, they don't see each other. We aren't seen in political spaces. We aren't heard in political spaces. And if we are, we're dogging each other out saying, well, we need to do this and that better instead of lending out that helping hand of, here's how we can do better. Here's what we're going to do better. And that's why elections over the past 10, 15 years have been so confusing. But even then, when we're ramping up and we're in this social political climate of the absentee ballots, how Donald Trump is acting, the wars that are going on around us, and then having local elections on top of that, you are going to be confused because you didn't have that education needed to put yourself in a position to understand what's going on. And voters don't get put in a position to understand what questions to ask their politicians or how to pick a candidate. They don't know when to decipher propaganda from fact. And that's something that's very important. And specifically in Orlando, in our Central Florida area, we have people running for school board right now. And that's something we should lean on them on. Hey, you're doing this, you're supposed to be running in this seat. Why are we don't even know about your election? If I didn't personally have a background in politics, I wouldn't have known we were having school board elections. And we're letting anybody get into office because no one is doing anything to make sure the people around them are educated. We put on a big talk and a big walk on why people should be educated, but we don't do the groundwork to make sure it gets there.
That's why we started
Um,
this.
Unfortunately, Florida is not going to get any better with regard to the educational process in light of what's happening in this state and what has happened with the attack on public education. And then, you know, these voucher programs that are just depleting public education. Um, so you might, Zoe, I will agree with you that it's the failure of educating. Um, but that's part of what we try to do at the Florida Voters League. Um, every opportunity I get, I try to explain not only the political process, but also who's made the sacrifice. See, that's the thing that I really feel that generations have missed. This process of voting, electing people, is not something that happened because it was the time. People fought for it and they died for it. They got lynched for it. And I just don't see people really understanding the sacrifice made for that vote. We have that historical event right here in Orange County. It happened on November 3rd, 1920, 126 years ago. July Perry wanted to vote. They refused to allow him to vote. He was given, he went to a judge. He went back to vote. And the white citizens decided to kill him. And he survived, but whites were killed. And then they proceeded to literally kill or run every single black person out of a coin. That was 126 years ago. And for the three of you on this with me, that's the same year women got the right to vote in this country. 126 years ago. So I want that, and women didn't get it just because somebody handed it to them. They spent 80 years of the suffrage movement doing it. Black folk didn't get it until 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. And all those people who died fighting for this, two of whom are buried 50 miles away from here, husband and wife. Their home was blown up. And so that's the part I want people to feel that part of it. That's what yeah, that 11-year-old kid, those three people dying to integrate that bowling alley. It's 19, 20 years old. King, 39 years old when he's assassinated. That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
If you
You
tear
gotta
it
feel it.
apart.
I totally understand the feeling aspect and I get that. I sympathize genuinely. But at the same time, when you look at my generation, for example, we're younger, we witness and we go through history classes and we hear what's happened in America and we hear that people for hundreds of years have been fighting for the same basic rights. If you were in that younger generation and you see people slowly giving up and turning political movements and rights movements into trends, you're not going to want to fight anymore. It's going to take a special kind of determination. And then when you go out to these older generations looking for a helping hand, for a step up, they expect you to already come educated. And it's not a, there's this disconnect of having a hand out to help them up into that realm of fighting for their rights. Because all we've seen so far is that everybody's fought and we still have gotten nowhere because we do technically have voting rights, but for a long time where they were restricted. And once they got unrestricted, we still dealt with blatant racism. We walk modern day, it's still blatant racism. It's still, well, our vote doesn't matter because we have the electoral college, or our vote doesn't matter because we're young and we're told that our opinions are not valued or they're incorrect, or we're taught that anything we say or do is just because we're young and our brains aren't developed. We get thrown a million and one reasons on why we shouldn't do something or why we shouldn't vote or why we shouldn't be involved. It adds up to a boiling pot.
And we
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
also,
I'll tell you. I hear that. I don't know why my generation or the generation that after would ever say that. You know, I don't know if anybody ever said it to me about, well, you're young and your opinion doesn't matter. Um, I, I wouldn't have paid any attention to that. That would not have impacted me and did not. But I remember my grandparents. They never, they never restricted me. They never criticized me about the opinions I had, except one thing.
what was that?
It was I was teasing them, but I said to them that President Roosevelt didn't expect people to live as long as they did to make retirement 65. It was just a joke. You just because Roosevelt was the president when most black people started changing from being Republicans to being Democrats
Democrats.
politically. But that's something. So I'm keeping that in mind in terms of how we treat young people. I tell you, I'm embracing young people.
You are,
That's what I'm
yes.
really pushing because I don't think your ideas are bad. I tell people this all the time. The only bad idea is none at all.
I like
But that's something, as I talk to my peers, I want them to respect young people. I want them to actually embrace them and hopefully, offer uh, advice, information, be a mentor.
I think for our generation, at least the millennials, it wasn't that not being told to be involved in politics. It was just not talking about politics.
Mhm.
And even when I started to get into politics, I think I told Zoe the other day, Nikki Fried came to an event at the West Colonial Mall and essentially was like, I know that we as Democrats have only come around every 4 years or when we need something and we make these promises, but trust us again and vote for me. It's kind of, for me, it's like, okay, well, my grandfather, my parents, like this is the same song and dance that, you were telling them, so why would I trust you? And it makes it worse because for me, it gives this illusion of like, we want your votes, but not necessarily, we don't necessarily care about your body. We don't care about your opinions. We just want you to show up, tell us yes when it comes to that time, and then we'll see you and make promises the next time that we need to hear your voice again. And to me, that's the disheartening part. So if you go to some of the communities that are predominantly black and brown, what you see is disenfranchisement. What you see is homelessness. I know that personally from my parents' neighborhood, there used to be homeless guys there, and they live on the south side of OBT. But then we found out that the police officers were taking homeless people from our side because it's considered the suburban side and taking them to the urban side and just dumping homeless people if they couldn't incarcerate them. These are our elected officials that allow these things to happen. How do you have faith in a system that does that to people? And that's not a partisan thing. That's on both sides of the aisle, and there has to be recognition for that. So I know for my generation, and B speaks, feel free to add from your perspective, but for my generation, it's just that promises are made and promises aren't kept.
It seems like
Yeah.
the, no, no, please go ahead.
Yes, I would say the biggest thing, and I think listening to each one of y'all's different perspective as far as the things we do right and the things that we do wrong. I think the biggest thing I wanted to talk about was the something that you mentioned, Larry, which was that the sense of sacrifice that we don't seem to recognize present day. And so I believe that because a lot of barriers were broken down for us to be able to have these type of discussions, for us to be able to express our opinions even online, for us to be able to protest in certain aspects, right? All of those things. Whereas, even thinking about my mom's generation, just one generation behind, when they went out and protest, they had conversations that they might not come back home today, right? Like that's how serious it was to be able to make a sacrifice. Today, it's looked at more like Zoe said, looked at more as a trend, like that the idea that this is something that's so big that can be impactful to your life and not only your life but to future state. That sense of that finality to it, it doesn't exist really as much as it should. At least not, I feel like not in America, not as much as it should. In other countries, they have that same lens. I think like a lot of war torn countries that have more to lose, I would say. Um, they have a different lens. They have those same similar types of conversations. They understand the magnitude of change and what it looks like to be able to sacrifice to make change. And I think people not realizing how the importance of things is kind of what leads us to get on the trend. You know what I mean? Like get on that wave of a trend, I believe. Just because it's for like shares, the idea that I'm doing something without actually doing something. You know what I mean? Like I want you to think that I care enough about this agenda, but at the end of the day, I go home and don't do anything, right? Yeah, so just I would say for just to kind of piggyback off of what you said earlier, Larry.
Thank you, B.
I
Mm.
committed to through the Voters League to do three things. Obviously, register people to vote, and register to vote to please participate by voting. But the one in the middle is the big one, and that's the education piece. Educating about who's running, what they stand for. I mean, what's their platform? Whatever their history is. Do they have what are they previously elected, currently elected? What did they stand for? So that people have a better understanding of who's running, and then giving people the opportunity to know about it through forums or debates, or even some articles written. That's the other thing I'm trying to get more of my members to write articles for the newspaper. I'm working on one. I have the concept of one, but it is actually about the Voting Rights Act. And I'm comparing the court's decision, if it's negative, and I expect it to be similar to the end of Reconstruction. And I won't get into all of that, but I think that it's really important for us to um, provide as many opportunities for the people to know who these elected officials are. One of the hurdles that we have is what's the forum? What is how do you get them in, the people in? How do they buy in? Not into a candidate, but into just learning about the candidates, showing up for these events. That's been a challenge for us.
I just want to say, whenever I hear newspaper, I think that that was something that worked like for our
Yeah.
parents. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna say instead of doing newspaper, maybe doing short clip video, educational videos instead.
Right.
Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah.
I
It's well, and you can help me with that.
I will.
I will say, like, I'm listening to you, Larry, and like for me, I agree. Reading is super like powerful for education, and if my generation actually enjoyed reading, it would work. Nobody's opening a book. No one's
What?
opening a book. Nobody is opening a forum unless it's to talk trash. Nobody's doing that. And on top of that, just to touch back on the point of education in school, although we want to like blame it on our lawmakers, it's us. We're the problem. Because when we have the power to be presence of these different caucuses and boards and things, and this isn't a shot directed towards you at all. I'm the president of my own caucus. It's a it's a matter of us taking the initiative to go into these high schools to ask for the permission to get ourselves in there to set up those kits for pre-registration. It's a matter of our local politicians not taking the time to take themselves to the high schools, to take themselves to the events where there's more students involved. It all comes down to not even just who's already sitting in office, but who's running to show that they're going to do something different. Because we can continue to support these same people who claim that they want to do better and they're trying to fight the other people that they're up against on their boards or in their committees. But like you said, you guys took to the streets. So why are we not taking to the streets now? Why are we not taking the time and forcing the hand of education instead of waiting for some lawmaker who clearly hasn't done anything in years to do so? Because it's not going to get better without forceful change.
I agree. Friend of mine, he's been in politics and elected over the past 25 years, and I don't think he does a very good job. I think I actually wish he would be defeated.
This your friend.
You know, I just don't think he's not even connecting with the people. He sends his staff out to the people. It's like really, it's just very troubling to me that seems to be his attitude. But let me just ask. We had this redistricting within the county of Orange, where because we now have two additional districts, commission districts. One of those additional districts is considered plurality minority. That is Caribbean,
District
yeah, which
7.
is District 7.
Okay.
Now, it's my understanding that there's like 9 candidates in that race.
It's growing by the day. It's growing by the day. People are filing, removing themselves. District 7 is an overcrowded race, and I wish that District 7 wasn't an overcrowded race because if somebody would just make the choice and sit down, I think everybody has the same initiative within that race. They're just
They
it's a
want to be
matter
the
of who we
leader.
meet.
Yeah,
Yes.
they have to be leaders. So what does that do to like voters, especially when it comes to the primaries? Like, what does that do in terms of if there's like 9 candidates? There's only so many people, and I believe the qualification is like 65% now, or 63.4, something like that, something very close to the 64, 65 range, right? In terms of percentage.
People have to know that they're in a new district in order to vote, and a lot of people don't know they're in a new district.
Um, Supervisor of Elections sent out new voter registration cards, which would have on the card. Well, again, reading
I
is,
was gonna say
you know,
reading is fundamental, Larry. So it has to be deeper than
but
that.
it has your district for school board, county commission, state representative, senate. All of that's on your card, and that
Larry,
was sent
Ask it,
out about
Zoe.
a month ago. If
Ask it,
you're a registered
Zoe.
voter, that's what. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've never read my voter registration card, and I've had her
Barely.
for almost 2 years. Um, Honestly, they could have spelled my name wrong, and I still wouldn't have known.
The only time I've ever looked at my voter's registration card is when I tried to go vote and they told me I was at the wrong precinct. Look up my card to know where the right precinct is.
We
Like,
need real advertisements for people to know they're in districts. They putting it on a voter registration card isn't enough. It's honestly, it's trying to pass off that you're doing your job and you're not.
correct.
If we're just being
Correct.
realistic, if you're not
Absolutely.
sitting, it should have been on the news. It should have been publicized a lot better. It should have been sit in an actual letter. If you get a hard copy letter from the city, one, you're gonna either think, is this a pink slip? Did I not pay my water bill? Or two, who went to jail? And then you're gonna open and you're gonna see it's about the election. And you're like, oh, sigh of relief. Let me finish reading this.
Of course, they don't send those. That's not what they send out. They send out like postcards that look like solicitations that people tend to put in file 13, the garbage.
Well, even then, a solicitation would have been better than just sending a new voter registration card. If anything, some people might just think theirs is expired and they just clicked a box one day to automatically renew.
And oh, you guys, you know what time it is? We are like 2 minutes out from 6:30. The hour flew by. I know it flew by fast, right? We didn't even get into the deep root of our conversation. But this is exactly why this kind of conversation is needed. And originally, I wanted to do this every month, once a month. But I think in order to get into the meat and potatoes, we might have to do it more frequently. And the idea originally was to have multiple guests, but I kind of like this dynamic right here. So for our audience who didn't get the opportunity to like meet us in the sense of like talking about all the topics that were mentioned, but like where the conversation went was so beautiful and so organic, and exactly honestly the contradictions that needed to be addressed. So with that, I want to give you guys an opportunity to give your closing statement, and then audience, please be aware. We will have more dates coming out. Hopefully, Larry will come back. Hopefully, Zoe will come back, and that we can continue these questions and really getting down to the deets. But Larry, is there anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Ooh, I think it's important to read. I know it may not, for some it might not be what they enjoy doing, but there are some autobiographies and biographies that you might want to read about. John Lewis being one of them. Read about him. Malcolm X being another. But the other thing is, I'd like to invite your audience to a meeting of the Orange County chapter of the Florida Voters League. That meeting is the second Saturday of each month. So the next meeting is Saturday, March 14th at 10 a.m. and it's at the James R. Smith Center on Bruton Boulevard in Orlando. And we want the Zoe Taylors of Orlando to be there. You will be respected, and your opinions will be respected and accepted. We just my vice president is 86 years old. My treasurer is 83 years old. Believe me.
So we,
They and uh, we are a welcoming group of seniors
they
who
are.
don't mind sharing, and because we care about what the future holds, and so that's what I'm leaving with.
Thank you, Larry. And I want to say, anybody interested in seeing how the Orange County Florida Voters League meeting is ran, we already have a live on our page, so you can see what they discussed the last one. It was really good information. I know the community was petitioning and fighting for things that are so pivotal and so important in their community, and it's just nice to see. I don't want to say that it's like watching like a show, but it's one of those shows where you're really going to get, the intimate details of that community. And that's a discussion that needs to be had. Zozo, what would you like to tell the audience before you go out?
Even for non-readers, I think it's very important that you educate yourselves, no matter how discouraged you may feel, or no matter how many times you might walk into a room and not see somebody like yourself. You making that change is so important, and without you doing the work and taking the steps, it's never going to get better. As somebody who just turned 19, who goes to campaign kickoff parties and other political events, it's never fun walking in there alone and being the youngest in the room and being the only young woman of color, but it's worth it to know I'm making a difference. And also everything that Larry said is on Kindle Fire, in case anybody.
Thank you, Zoe. B, what would you like to say?
Yes, I would like to say I appreciate spending time and having discourse with everyone per usual. Lastly, I would like to say to our listeners and people who are nervous about making first steps that evoke change, small steps matter. So little things that you do that might seem small, it adds up to the big picture. So even if you have to do it alone, it's no problem. There should never be a problem with you making a step or making a step towards change.
Thank you. And I would leave the audience with any questions that you all have that you wanted to ask either Zoe, either Larry, either me or B. Please send it in. We're going to continue discussion in the next episode. We will cover how local election works. We'll talk about misinformation, voter confidence, preparing voters for candidate evaluation. Like all of the things will be covered. So if you love this episode and want to support the work that we do, please like, subscribe, share. Thank you for starting the hard conversation with us, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because informed communities build real change. Stay informed, stay empowered, and as always, love, peace, and support Black businesses. See ya.